Hi guys, my name is Kelly Hagan and I'm the co-coordinator for LGBTQ services. Welcome to our conference. This is the second annual Bluegrass Community and Technical College Building Bridges Conference. So you might wonder, what does building bridges mean? It's a metaphor for connecting people. And the more we're connected and that we're able to communicate, the more we're likely to be able to build our intercultural understanding of each other and turn towards each other rather than away. So now I'd like to introduce my co-coordinator, Robert Hinkle. Robert, are you there?
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Hinkle, and I am Kelly's counterpart and co-coordinator of LGBTQ services at BCTC. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to go over a few housekeeping measures before we get started and hear our wonderful keynote speaker, Dr. Story. Concurrent sessions are scheduled for 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. with a drag queen story hour in between, beginning at 12 p.m. There are 3 ways to join a session, and I'd like to go over those with you. 1, you can click on the Join Sessions in the digital conference program. 2, you can click on the join links in your registration confirmation email, or you can click on the join links in your Outlook calendar or alternative email provider calendar. In each session, in the chat feature, you will find a PowerPoint introduction for the session presenter and a link to the conference evaluation survey. And please take a few moments at the end of the conference to provide feedback and comments. We would appreciate that. Inside the sessions, the cameras will be disabled and the microphones will be turned off. However, you will have access to the chat feature and to the microphones to ask questions to the presenter. Please use the raise hand icon and the moderator will recognize you and you can turn your mic on and ask questions. Once you've asked your question, please turn your mic off. I think that covers the housekeeping measures. One more thing, please do stick around after the conference for the closing remarks at 1:55 from our president, Dr. Acapo. And now I'd like to introduce our Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Dr. Carlous Yates, who will be introducing our keynote speaker. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome virtually to BCTC. We're excited to have you all this morning. I have the honor and the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker. And of course, my screen would act funny. So here we go. So Dr. Kaila Story. So Dr. Story is an associate professor in the departments of Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies and Pan-African Studies, as well as the Audre Lorde Endowed Chair in Race, Class, and Gender and Sexuality Studies at the University of Louisville. Go Carlous. She is also the co-creator and co-producer and co-host for the WFPL Strange Fruit Musings on Politics, Pop Culture, and Black Gay Life, an award-winning 9-year running podcast focusing on social justice, race, LGBTQ+ experiences and identities, as well as pop culture. The podcast averaged 6,000 downloads weekly and 24,000 downloads each month. Guest podcasts have included celebrities like Terrell, Alvin McCraney, Jill Scott, Janelle Monáe, and Wanda Sykes, as well as thought leaders including Darnell Moore, Wade Davis, and Dr. Brittany C. Cooper, to name a few. Strange Fruit was created in 2012 and has nearly 350 episodes in archives. Awards and honors for Strange Fruits include Outstanding Podcast, Internet-Based Video and Audio Show from PrideIndex.com, Bluegrass Black Pride Trailblazer Award, Indie Popcorn Best LGBTQ Podcast, the Leo Weekly Readers' Choice Awards Best Podcast for second place. Dr. Story was part of the NBC inaugural Pride 30 Award, which featured LGBTQ+ community leaders and change makers Dr. Story was recently recognized by former First Lady Michelle Obama's nonprofit organization, Reach Higher, for creating safe spaces for LGBTQ plus students in and out of higher education. Everyone, please give us a round of applause for and welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Story.
Hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Yates, for that wonderful introduction. I'm so excited to talk with you all today about intersectionality and how intersectionality relates to systems of oppression and also privilege as you go into your sessions around these very issues. I was really excited to see just how thorough and thoughtful the creators of the conference were in terms of the things that you need to know when it comes to building coalitions, when it comes to organizing and doing educational things around these intersections. So I'm excited to speak with you all today about the urgency of intersectionality during these critical times. I'm going to do this through discussing the lived experiences of queer, non-binary feminist writer and activist Pauli Murray. While expounding upon Murray's life and legacy, I intend to illuminate the contemporary struggles that many Black, non-binary, trans, and gender non-conforming individuals still face when it comes to misunderstandings around intersectional identities, and how intersectional biases can engender negative outcomes for Black, non-binary, trans, and gender non-conforming individuals specifically. And I'll relate that back to other folks who are in the LGBTQIA community. And I'll relate these biases, these intersectional biases, to a system, a main system that we all utilize, and that's healthcare. And how does intersectional difference create negative outcomes when it comes to Black, trans, non-binary individuals trying to access health equity? So before I begin, I would like to thank Brandon Schmidt and Dr. Carlous Yates for inviting me and extending this invitation, and also Kelly and Robert as well, and all of the organizers who organized such a wonderful conference. Okay, so let's talk. So we already know that we are living in immensely critical times. We are 2 years into a global pandemic, and we are still witnessing the war on mask wearing and disputing whether or not a dangerous virus is actually real. We are witnessing wars on critical race theory in public space, and at the same time, we are constantly bearing witness to immense violence, from police and state violence to the intimate and communal violence against Black trans women and Black non-binary folks specifically. So how can understanding intersectionality and what it means for a Black person, for instance, who simultaneously holds other politicized identities, help us to understand the aforementioned turmoil that has begun to frame our lives? So first, let's start with defining what intersectionality actually means. The term intersectionality was coined in 1989 by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a critical race theorist and also a law professor. And Crenshaw created the term to describe how race, class, gender identity, and other characteristics intersect with one another and overlap. Before the arguments raised by the originators of critical race theory began, there wasn't much criticism on how structures, specifically in law and society, could be intrinsically racist rather than simply thinking about them as distorted by racism, right? And so to have something that's inherently or intrinsically racist means that the structure in and of itself, when it was imagined, it practiced exclusionary practices, that an institution was imagined only for a certain group of folk. Right? And so when we think about systems, when we think about healthcare, when we think about colleges and universities, when we think about different institutions, we have to also think about how intersectional identity interacts with these various institutions in different ways.